this episode, we are observing and painting the sockeye salmon spawning in their habitat. Today we are joined by scientist Nancy von Wagner, and we'll discuss the connection between science and art.
How geology and art come together. Yeah, so I was studying art. I was going to be an artist. My dad was an artist, and I was making my way to art school. I said, "Well, Dad, what should I study when I go to art school?" And he said, "Study everything in the world, because the role of the artist is to communicate the world around them, and you can't do that unless you understand it." So in the process of doing that, I became very interested in the wonder of geology and how our Earth got to be the way it is. And plate tectonics was just being discovered at the time, and we were discovering that these plates could move around. The Earth had changed drastically over geologic time, and I was just fascinated. The way they come together for me is in the whole notion of exploration and discovery and observation. So to be a good scientist, you have to be a good observer. And you have to be able to identify problems, and then you have to find creative ways to solve them. And you have to think laterally, really, to bring different ideas together to address an individual problem. And it's the same, and so it was really, I think, my art background that made me a good scientist, because by studying art, you learn that creativity, you learn those observational skills, you learn to be able to identify the unknown, and then you have the creativity to be able to figure out how to go about solving it.
The act of plein air painting can be challenging at the best of times, but trying to capture a beautiful salmon swimming through the water while it's going through its spawning cycle can be very challenging. Instead of copying the fish, we are interpreting the feeling and the motions that they create.
When I'm painting the salmon, I'm not seeing a salmon that's alive today, although these salmon have this fantastic 4-year life cycle, and we're seeing the end of it. So what I have in my mind is the beginning of it, when these salmon first evolved, so 50 million years, about 55 million years ago. And then we have this period where we don't really know a lot about the salmon. And then there's a better fossil record, and we're seeing how they differentiated from about 7 million years ago till present. What I see is the relationship of the geology and these isolated basins during the Pleistocene that allowed all the different species of salmon to evolve the way they did, to lead us to this kind of wonder of nature that we see now.
Salmon are beautiful on many different levels, not only to paint, but also from a scientific point of view.
So to my mind, artists are scientists and scientists are artists. I don't see a distinction between the two. To be a good scientist, you have to be creative, you have to be innovative in order to solve the problems in science. To be a good artist, you have to be creative and you have to be innovative to come up with the original artwork and to see things the way nobody has seen them before. So I don't see any distinction, and I think it's really a shame that our institutions, or our educational institutions, are siloed into, you know, the art side and the science side. But if we look back in time, this is really a relatively recent distinction. Some of our greatest artists were scientists. Leonardo da Vinci, for example. Many years ago in China, the person who invented the first seismogram was actually an artist. And he just came, and he had the creative energy and the problem-solving skills, which you have as an artist and you have as a scientist, to be able to figure out how to keep something stationary while the rest of the earth is shaking. So to me, they're both the same, and they both lead us to be able to discover and understand the wonders of this world in which we live. I was teaching at Thompson Rivers University, and in my teaching, I ask my students to draw concepts. And it's because that in the process of drawing, we make observations and we connect what we're doing with our hands is connected to our brain, and we learn it better. And once you've drawn something, you understand what you've drawn, because you can't draw it if you don't understand it. And then once you understand it, of course, you remember it, and then you can expand on it. And it becomes part of that information, becomes part of who you are, part of your fabric. Yeah, I think because I hear that all the time, you know, what do you mean? You know, I hear it from artists, I can't even do 2 + 2, I can't do math. The thing is, when you look at what an artist does, an artist is always learning new things, always learning new techniques, and it's because you're motivated to do that. That same mind becomes motivated to do something else that requires this skill, which is mathematics. You will learn how to do it the same way you learn how, you know how to hold that brush or develop that perspective. You'll learn how to do math. Maybe if there is a distinction, it's in where we want to ask the questions and where we. So for me, I'm interested in everything, and I want to use everything I have, every skill I have, to be able to address those questions. And so you go off and you learn, and it's not just for me. It's that there's a close connection between art and science, but art and science and society. Think of what we wouldn't know about past societies if they didn't leave us pieces of artwork, if they didn't make pottery, if those things weren't everlasting, and with these universal symbols that we can understand across cultures. What I'm thinking about when I'm actually on the spot painting the fish, it's funny because then when you're actually painting, then there's a whole other discussion that you're having, because it's your relationship with the fish and the relationship between the fish and the canvas. So what I'm thinking about is we're not painting for hours and hours today. You can't paint everything. You don't want to paint everything. So I'm thinking about I'm looking at the fish, I'm thinking about the form of the fish, and what are the things that are most interesting about that fish. And of course it's their movement. It's the fact that they're in the water, there are a lot of them, and they're moving around. So then the conversation that I'm having is with myself, I guess, and with you as well, as we're talking, is how can we create that movement and give people the sense of that movement, and at the same time the sense that that movement that we're seeing it's coming to an end, and yet they're laying their eggs, so it's also coming to a beginning. And so that was how I came to that kind of a spiral form and that sort of teardrop shape, and sort of the belly of the earth, if you like, where the salmon are swimming down. But the colors are bright, but they're not all that bright. because it's kind of one of those, it's like so much in life. It's a good story, and at the same time it's, you know, it's kind of a sad story. It's kind of a sad story too. We get a lot of appreciation seeing the salmon here today, but we need the salmon. You know, we need the salmon to stay healthy and to continue to create, because we're in charge now. You know, people are in charge of the quality of the environment, and that sense of responsibility that we need to preserve this. So what I'm thinking about today when I'm painting is not just painting, but I'm thinking about the story of that salmon. I want to be able to tell that story. I want you to feel in some ways that long journey, not just the journey from the Pacific Ocean to this river, but that long journey from that Eocene fossil bed through years and years, millions of years of evolution to have this salmon that we see here today. And then our relationship to the salmon, that sense of responsibility that we have for their continued survival. That's what I'm thinking about today.
It is always wonderful to get out and paint and experience nature, but once in a while we get an opportunity to experience something extraordinary. This trip out painting the sockeye salmon was absolutely amazing. We got to see them move and swim and capture their color and feel up close and personal, something I'm never going to forget. I'm Karla Pearce, and thanks for watching.